If you need any My Team grinds in any mode, hit up my boy Witty for safe, reliable, and the cheapest grinding services around. Hit him up on Twitter. You won't be disappointed. Yo, what is good, YouTube? Welcome back to another JC2K video. In today's video, we're ranking the best opals in NBA 2K25 My Team here on this tier list. Before we hop into the video, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help me push towards the 40,000 subscriber mark on the channel. I upload every single day, multiple videos a day. We'd really appreciate it if y'all do subscribe. We got 45 of the best Galaxy Opal cards in My Team to rank on this list. If there's anybody I left off you'd like to hear my thoughts on the Galaxy Opals, let me know. I'll try to go through the comments and get back to y'all here pretty soon. And yeah, first card of the day is Julius Randle, who I think is fine, not great. Jumper's fine. Defensively, he's pretty versatile, pretty good, really good stats and badges. Don't love the movement. Honestly, player build's a little bit undersized. I don't love the card by himself, to be totally honest. I think he's fine. I don't think he's great. Like low B, high C feels like the right spot for him. Paul Pierce is one of the worst jumpers in the game. That is a legitimate killer for him as a card. I don't think overall he's that bad of a card besides the jump shot, but the jump shot is awful and that kills cards. And when you're looking at the best opals, that puts him in the bottom tier, in my opinion. OG Anunoby gonna go A tier. I don't think I'd quite go S with him, but he's not far off it at all. Release is really nice. Defensively, he's elite. He's a really good card and honestly could definitely be argued as he might get moved up. We'll see. Anthony Davis, I like a lot, but I don't think he's like elite jump shot wise. His size isn't incredible at this point. He's still a very good card. Don't get it twisted at all, but I think realistically high B is probably the right spot for me. I might not agree with that, and if you don't, that is totally fine, but that is currently my thoughts on where I would put this AD card. Maybe that's a little low. Maybe he goes A and OG goes S. I don't know. We'll see as the video progresses if I want to change anything up about this list or not. I really haven't decided yet, but Zion, I'm going D tier for Zion in all honesty. Jumper's just not all that good. I don't like it. And in all honesty, I just don't think he's that elite overall. Like animation wise, just kind of meh. Doesn't have great movement. Release isn't all that good. He's only 6'6". I understand the stats and badges are great, but again, among the best of the best, I think he's towards the bottom. Lauri Markkanen. I think I'm going A for Lauri as well as an opal. If he has this Evo to Dark Matter, then he's S tier, but obviously that Evo to Dark Matter isn't really a thing, you know what I mean, that would affect this type of list anyway. So in my opinion, I think A tier is probably the right spot for him at this point. I don't know, y'all might not agree with that placement either, but a 7-foot small forward is great, but he's got no real movement, and in all honesty, he's just not super elite defensively, at least as a base card. Definitely a viable option overall, though I will say that, like, no doubt about it at all in my mind that he's a viable option. I just think probably A tier is right. McAdoo. He's probably the second best opal power forward, or arguably the best opal power forward on this list. I think I'm going S tier for McAdoo. I really like his release. I understand that he's a little bit undersized, but as a whole, I actually think he's a pretty great card. In my opinion, McAdoo's one of those guys that it's just like, I think he has to be S tier, to be totally honest. He's just such a solid all-around card, so well-rounded. Releases money. I mean, the only flaw with him is the size. Everything else is awesome, to be honest about that card. He is really, really good. Jaren Jackson Jr., I'm actually also giving S tier. I think those are the two S tier guys at the power forward position in the opal tier. Like just another really, really good card who, to me, is kind of a no-brainer in my opinion. S tier. Defensively, he's awesome. He defends his butt off. His release is really nice. He's got good size. His player build is great as well. Just another really, really good card in my team. Drazen Petrovic, I like him better than OG. OG's borderline S. I think that means Drazen has to be definitely S. He's basically Brandon Roy. It's pretty much what he is. He's like a slightly worse version of B-Roy is probably my best description of the card. He's an inch shorter. He's not quite as good defensively, but he actually moves better than B-Roy, and his jumper is basically the exact same. As a whole, I do think he's a very, very high level card, and in my opinion, I think he's S tier. Vlade Divac. Gotta go A, not quite S. I mean, there's a couple of bigs that are just a little bit better than him overall, at least one for sure. As good of a card as he is, and he is very, very good, I just realistically think, I think A tier is probably the right spot for him because he's not on the level of a Wemby. He's just not. And so realistically, I think that's probably the right spot for him, in all honesty. Karl Malone, I go A tier for Malone. I actually like this Malone card a lot. Defensively, he's awesome. His release is pretty good. His movement is good, although he does only have a 60 ball handle, which I think is definitely a thing that holds the card back a bit. But the jumper's nice. The defense is elite. The player build's awesome. I think A tier is fair. Anthony Edwards, I am not a fan. He's just really undersized at his position, and I just don't think overall that he's actually all that good of a card. Like, I just think he's a bit overrated as a whole. Not a card that I personally would probably run, is my honest opinion. Even if I had him for free, I think there's other good free cards like lower tier than lower card tier than Opal that are better than this Anthony Edwards card. LeBron's still gonna get S tier for me.
He's just so good. He can't not be S tier, to be honest. You know what I mean? His opal's not that much worse than his dark matter. He's so elite defensively. His jumper is money. His fade is money. Really, the only flaw that this card has is that he's not an exceptionally top tier shot creator. His SIGs could definitely be better. But besides that, he's just one of those cards that you're like, I don't know what he does wrong. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of where Braun is at this point in the game. For me, at least, I think he's definitely S tier still. Isaiah Thomas, really bad, honestly. I'm looking at this list. I think Ant and Zion are the two that I would maybe move up. So we'll put those there toward the top of D tier because they might get moved into C. Isaiah Thomas is 6'1", can't dunk. Defensively, he's not good. I mean, he is not a card I would recommend at all, in all honesty. I just don't think he's good at all. He's pretty trash. He's a free reward card from Ascension this season, but definitely not very good. Arvydas Sabonis, if he was faster than 50 speed, he'd be higher than C tier, but he's 50 speed, and that's a killer for a card. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is a killer for a card. In my opinion, Arvydas Sabonis is not a card that I would probably run, just mainly because of that. That is one of those things that really does have the ability to kill a card at a pretty high level. It's just being that slow, and unfortunately, that is the case with Arvydas Sabonis. Paul George. If I got OG in A tier, I think Paul George got to be A tier too, because those two guys are very similar to each other in terms of overall level of card. I don't know. I think Paul George, as good as he is defensively, he's got great size, his release is money. Realistically, I don't know. I feel like A tier is probably right. I don't think I'd go S tier with him at this point. He's just not quite high enough level as an offensive card in terms of the shot creation, in my opinion, to be S tier, but he's certainly not far off it at all. He and OG are both guys that I think you could argue S tier if you wanted to, for sure. Next up, Tim Duncan. Think I'm going B tier for Tim because I'd rather have Vlade than Tim at this point. And if I got Vlade A, I think that means Tim kind of has to go B. Definitely not a bad card at all. I mean, he's very good defensively. His release is solid. He just doesn't have much by shot creation. His jumper, he's only got a 79 3 ball, which isn't ideal. I don't love that card. Bill Walton's kind of trash. His stats and batters aren't that good. I just overall don't think he's a very good card in general. I'm not a big fan of Bill Walton. So in my opinion, again, it's like pretty mid, to be totally honest. I think D tier is probably definitely the right spot for him. Next up is Wemby. Wemby is obviously S tier, the best center in the game right now. I mean, you could argue 100 overall KP, but that's literally it in terms of cards that might be better than Wemby at the center spot. He is as elite as it comes as a shot maker. His speed, even at 85 at 7'4", is really good. Like, he's just a glitch. Incredible card. I got Paul George in A tier. That means Paul is going in A tier as well. I do think Braun is better overall. Again, movement is the biggest flaw with Paul George, with Paolo. Otherwise, he's a very, very good card, like no doubt about it whatsoever. But to me, I do think still you're looking at a card with some flaws. I mean, there's no doubt about that because it's just the movement is not all that top tier. Zach LaVine also feels like an A tier card to me. I don't think he's quite S, but he's really not far off of it at all. I'm looking at the rest of the point guards. Is there any point guards? There's one point guard better than him on this list. He might be S tier. I think I'm only gonna have one point guard in S tier, to be totally honest. I think I'm leaving LaVine in A tier. I wish the SIGs were a little better. That's really about it. Otherwise, I really like the card, but I do wish the SIGs were a little better, and I'd be lying to say that I don't. So again, in my opinion, I think it's like, I don't know. It's tough to rank these types of cards, but I think that's where we're gonna go with LaVine. Next up is Kawhi. Another elite defensive card with a good release and a great fade. I mean, he's even got some movement. I think he's pretty cold. I mean, he's good enough to become, I don't know, man. This is another one that's one of those that's a pretty tough guy to rank. You could argue S if you wanted to. I would definitely take Drazen over him, but I feel like OG, Kawhi, and Paul George all the same level. That seems like it's right to me in the A tier. Jason Tatum, B tier. Just doesn't move well. Stat and badge wise, he's good. His release is nice. He just doesn't move well, and his fade isn't good. So holds him back, no doubt about that. I think B tier for him. Carmelo, not strong enough defensively, in my opinion, to be A tier. I actually like the card overall, but I just realistically don't think that I could personally put him any higher than this on this list. I don't know. I think B tier is probably the right spot for him as well. And then you got Cade, who I am going to put S tier. I think he's the best point guard on this list, in my opinion, at least. Jumper's money, movement's good. The fade isn't great, but that's about the only real flaw that I have with this card. Otherwise, I actually think he's very, very good. So in my opinion, yeah, no issues with him at all as an S tier card. I think he's the best point guard on this list. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I'm gonna go B tier. Doesn't have a high enough level jump shot. That's his biggest flaw. Otherwise, I actually really like the card, but the jumper is not very good. He's only got a 64 3 ball. Holds him back is basically my thought process and why he's only in the B tier. I have like no C tier cards. That's something I'm noticing already. Although, Tracy McGrady, y'all are gonna hate me for this one. I think he's C tier. Jumper's not that good. Movement sucks. He's not special. I understand his name is Tracy McGrady and he's an exciting name in my team, but he's actually not that good of a card in my team, in my personal opinion. I'm not super high personally on Tracy McGrady by any means. So definitely another card's like, I just don't love him. DeMar DeRozan, similarly, I actually think he's worse than T-Mac. Just don't like the jump shot. Movement isn't great. When you don't have either of those things, I mean, T-Mac's jumper is better than DeMar's. It's definitely better overall. But if you don't have both those things, it's hard for you to be justified as a high-level option at the shooting guard position, and DeMar really doesn't. So he's definitely C tier. KD, I actually think I'd take Paul George or Paulo and Karl Malone over Opal KD personally. I just think they're better overall defensively. His jumper's nice. He's got good size. Like, he is by far not a liability. No doubt about that. But at the same time, nah, he's A tier. I'm going to give him A tier. I think I'm wrong for that one. And for KD, I do think he is overall A tier. I think that's the right spot for him. Dirk, B tier. Wish the jumper was better. That's about it. I mean, the stats and badges are pretty good all the way around. Not a bad card, but I do wish the jump shot was better. That's kind of the thing that holds KD back holds Dirk back for me, because otherwise I think you could argue A tier, but he's definitely not better than Tim Duncan or AD. Actually, I think he's probably worse. I'm putting him C tier, to be honest. The jumper is an issue. It really is. And it's a noticeable issue. I think it's enough to put him C tier. Bernard King, another guy who I think has to go A tier. The movement is awesome. The animations overall. Who is the best of the A tier shooting guards? OG, Kawhi, Bernard, or Paul George? I think it's OG. I'm putting OG in S tier and I'm leaving the other three in A tier. I think that's what I'm going to do. Y'all may not agree with it, but I think that's what we're going to do with this list. Kawhi has an argument. Paul George has an argument. Bernard offensively has an argument. Defensively, not really. He's maybe better than Kawhi, though. I don't know, man. This is tough. I think this is what we're going to go with. Rudy Gobert. I am actually putting an S tier. I love that card. Power forward center, I think he's awesome. His versatility, and honestly, him and Vlade are very similar cards. I actually think Vlade might be better at center. Rudy, though, I think is better at power forward. The defense he provides as a screener and his size is really, really impressive. I actually love that card. I think he's extremely, extremely good. And in my opinion, anyway, I would have him very high on this list. I think his power forward ability is absolutely elite. Jason Richardson, high-level shot creator, another guy who has to go A tier. I just can't not put him in the A tier with how good of a shot creator he is offensively. Defensively, he's a little bit limited. There's no doubt about that, but I don't think it's a big enough deal, in all honesty, to hold him back much at all on this list. I think A tier is as low as he can go. Dwight Howard, I'm putting him with Dirk in the C tier. Jumper it's not bad, but the upper isn't great. And he honestly, despite his speed and stats and stuff, just doesn't have elite size or anything. I don't love the card. I think he's C tier. I'm not super high on him. Kyrie, I'm sorry, it's the size. Movement is fun. He's definitely usable, but he is D tier, I think. I just think the size is too much of an issue. He's not really a slasher at all. I mean, he's got an 80 driving dunk, but he's not elite. Like, I think that's probably right for him in the D tier. Yao. I really want to put Yao B, but I think that's wrong. His size makes him A tier. Stats and badges are good overall, but he is slow and he doesn't shoot the ball well. I'm not that high on him, to be totally honest. Maybe that's a surprising or unpopular opinion, but he's definitely good. He's top 10 big in the game, but he's not a card that I would like super recommend by any means as like a must-have card or anything like that in my team. Definitely not bad, but certainly not insane either, in my opinion, at this point. D-Rob is also going to go A tier for me. We got a really big A tier in this list. That's just how it's going to be. A lot of good cards. D-Rob, I really like. I think defensively, he's awesome. I think offensively, he's really good. I wish he could play more positions than just center. That is a little bit disappointing. If he could play power forward, that would raise him up even more. Would definitely put him at least arguably in the S tier, but I think right now A tier is right for him. Klay Thompson, high level 3 and D, but that's about it. He doesn't have an unbelievably OP release. His shot creation isn't there. His slashing certainly isn't there either. Overall, he's not a card that I particularly look at and go, oh yeah, that card's a beast. That's just not this card at this point. So I think C tier for him. Giannis, I'm going S tier. His ability to play the small forward position really elevates him as an overall card, makes him a truly extremely elite option in my team. I just think defensively, he's pretty overpowered with his size at the 3, and then offensively he holds it down absolutely enough to be a really good card. So definitely S tier for me, no doubt about that one whatsoever. AK, great small forward defensively. The jumper is nice. I feel like he's another guy that has to go in the A tier. I know we got so many A tier cards, but I just feel like I can't not put most of these cards in the A tier because realistically, he's really good. You know what I mean? Like, I really think AK is an elite card, and I feel like he has to go pretty high up on this list. Wilt Chamberlain is not as good as Vlade or Rudy, in my opinion, but he does play his role extremely well. And I think defensively, as a rebounder, all that type of stuff, he actually still is an A tier guy. I think I'm going to go put him in the A tier realistically. Yeah, I think that's right. I just think the defense and the rebounding provides enough value to put him there. Steph is D tier, can't defend, jumper's bad. It's a no-go. I mean, the jumper isn't bad. He can't defend, he can't dunk. And the jumper's inconsistent. It's not bad, it's actually very quick, but it is kind of inconsistently challenging to green, I will say, if nothing else. So I don't love that card at all. I think he's honestly a little bit limited, and yeah, just undersized, not good. Şengün, I'm going B tier. Release is nice, but he is a little undersized. He's not insanely fast defensively. He's not dominant. He's a nice pick and popper, though. He is a good card, but I think if I got AD and Tim Duncan in B, so is Alper and Şengün is basically what I'll say. Rudy Gay getting... Actually, I'm going to give Rudy Gay an A tier spot. I like him over the small forwards that are in the A tier. I think he's an S tier guy. I really do. I think he's a great card. I think defensively, he's viable. I think offensively, his fade is elite as a whole. He's just an extremely well-rounded, really good card. I'm very high on this Rudy Gay card overall. I think he's one of the best small forwards in the game. And then Elton Brand, final card on the list. Has Curry Escape, has pretty good stats and badges. I don't love the jump shot, but I think realistically high B or low A is pretty fair. Not definitely a viable enough option in my team. Could be argued A tier as well for sure. So definitely a top heavy list here in this one, but I hope y'all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment and subscribe. I'll be back with more 2K content very soon. I appreciate y'all. Peace.